Good evening, and thanks for letting your tired mind wander with me. The day still clings, deadlines, noise, little frictions, and tonight you rinse it off in starlight. The ocean is calm as glass, and beneath that dark mirror a city waits in concentric rings, like crystal bracelets stacked with patient care. You taste cool brine, and everything slows. Quick reality check. You probably won't survive this in the heroic sense. Your stress is about to get quietly, embarrassingly defeated. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and let me know how your day has really been, your worries, your exhaustion, or even a tiny joy that made you smile. I'm here to truly listen and offer the most sincere, heartfelt advice I can. Now turn off the lights. Take a deep, slow breath. Let your tiredness melt away, and gently close your eyes. Let's drift together into tonight's dreamlike lands. And tomorrow morning, if you still remember, send me a message and tell me what you dreamed. You let the surface world dim as you sink, slowly, safely, through water that cools you like a clean sheet. The moon becomes a blurred coin. The stars smear into soft chalk lines. Your ears stop arguing with the world, and the ocean replaces that noise with steady pressure, as if the sea is holding you so you don't have to hold yourself. Atlantis doesn't arrive with a thunderclap. It arrives like understanding. First, a pale arc below you, then a second, then a full set of concentric circles, ring-canals catching starlight and returning it as a quiet glow. The canals are crystal-clear loops, like glass ribbons laid into the seabed. Between the rings, terraces rise in smooth steps, shell-glass domes, pale stone platforms, coral inlays that look grown into place rather than built. Every line is curved, everything cooperates with the water. You expect ruins, because myths love drama. Atlantis refuses. It feels intact the way a well-kept library feels intact, silent, orderly, still doing its job. Light threads along canal rims, not harsh and electric, not fiery and hungry, but gentle radiance that seems to come from inside the material, as though the city remembers daylight and replays it in a softer key. A small craft glides into your path. It's shaped like a crescent leaf, thin and elegant, its hull shimmering like mother of pearl. No propeller chews the water. No bubbles shout. Along its edges, tiny crystals blink in patient sequence. 1, 2, 3, then pause, then repeat, as if the canal itself is breathing. You settle onto it without effort. The seat warms to you in a way that's almost funny, like the city looked at your tense shoulders and decided to fix that without paperwork. The craft begins to glide, and the outer ring canal opens around you like a calm river. The current is engineered, subtle, steady, purposeful, and it guides you clockwise with the confidence of a host who already knows where you need to go. Above you, the canal's surface ripples in slow motion, scattering moonlight into shifting coins. Below you, the canal floor is so clear you can see pale stones set beneath it, their edges smooth as if time has been filing them down for centuries. Faint warm veins thread the crystal, just enough to make the glow feel alive. On the inner edge, the city rises in steps, narrow bridges, low arches, platforms where lanterns hang, and domes that soften the glow into gentle gradients. Atlantis doesn't show off. It just exists, confidently quiet, letting you notice at your own speed. The first sea gardens appear as you curve along the ring. Kelp fronds sway in neat clusters. Coral fans open like patient hands. The glow around them is not a performance. It's a function, calm technology disguised as beauty. The water feels cleaner near them, and your thoughts feel less crowded. A few figures move along the canal walkways, buoyed by garments that ripple like sea silk. They don't crowd you or stare. They glance toward you with unhurried attention, then return to their tasks, tending crystal markers, adjusting lanterns, guiding harvested kelp toward a terrace. Their movements are economical, practiced, almost ceremonial, and you realize that in this place, even work looks like a lullaby. As your craft passes, the canal lights shift. Blink, blink, pause, then steady again, like a polite nod written in illumination. You understand without words. You're being noticed, welcomed, smoothly folded into the city's rhythm. Not celebrated, not tested. Simply accommodated, the way a quiet home accommodates a guest by lowering the lights. The ring canal widens into a circular basin, and the water becomes a mirror. In that mirror you see the city's promise: repetition without boredom, order without pressure, beauty without demand. The craft slows near a low platform edged with crystal posts, each holding a steady point of light. Those points align with. You drift from the craft onto the platform as if you've always known how. The crystal beneath your feet holds steady, cool and faintly textured, like polished stone that remembers being sand. Water beads along its surface but doesn't pool. It slides away in tidy rivulets, guided by grooves so shallow you only feel them if you pay attention. Atlantis is full of this kind of subtle kindness. Design that does the work quietly so you don't have to. The sea gardens begin immediately beyond the platform, not behind fences or gates, but woven right into the city's paths. A walkway curves forward like a ribbon, edged by beds of luminous algae and low coral ridges that glow from within, the color muted and soothing, never screaming for your attention. Soft green light breathes up through kelp leaves. Pale blue gleams along shell-shaped planters. Every few steps, a little crystal bud rises from the stone, catching the glow and bending it into a gentle halo that keeps the shadows friendly. You walk, and the air tastes different here, still salty, but with a sweet mineral note, like rain on warm pavement, like clean glass after it's been rinsed. The water above the open terraces filters moonlight down in slow, wavering sheets, and the whole place feels like it's lit by memory rather than electricity. A group of locals moves ahead of you, not hurrying, not pausing dramatically either. They carry shallow trays of pearly seeds, yes, seeds, but ocean-born, nestled in damp moss that seems to breathe. You watch them tilt the trays into a long, narrow channel that runs beside the walkway. The seeds slide into place, then settle, and the channel's glow deepens a shade, like the garden saying thank you. You follow the curve of the path into a broader terrace where the sea gardens rise in layered steps. Here, kelp stands tall like an underwater forest, but it's trained into clean rows, each frond anchored to a pale stone base etched with tiny spiral grooves. Coral clusters grow in measured bursts, shaped like fans and bowls and branching hands. Between them, small pools hold floating petals, thin translucent discs that look like they belong to a flower and a jellyfish at the same time. They turn slowly, catching light, scattering it onto the surrounding stone in moving lace patterns. This isn't decoration. You can feel that immediately. The gardens have purpose in the way a kitchen has purpose, everything placed where it can be reached, cared for, used. You notice channels that carry water through the beds, not randomly, but in deliberate routes that wash past certain plants first, then others. Some areas are brighter, warmer. Some are cooler, calmer. Atlantis isn't just growing beauty. It's growing balance. You sense movement near the edge of a coral ridge. A small creature, sleek and silver, gliding with a lazy confidence. Not a fish exactly. More like a living ribbon with fins that barely move. It slips between coral fans and pauses near a crystal bud that pulses faintly. The creature's skin takes on the bud's glow for a second, then it continues on, brighter, as if it's been charged by gentleness itself. The whole garden is a system of exchanges. Light into life, life into cleanliness, cleanliness into comfort. As you wander deeper, you realize how the paths are arranged. They don't cut through the gardens, they thread with them. Walkways narrow where the plants need space, widen where people might pause. Small alcoves appear where the light is softer, like someone designed them for tired minds. You step into one, and the sound of water changes. The ocean's pressure hushes everything, but here the current makes a faint, steady whisper, like a slow exhale. It's the kind of sound your nervous system recognizes as safe. On a nearby terrace, caretakers move in smooth patterns. Some tend the kelp bases, brushing away fine silt with tools shaped like soft combs. Others handle coral fragments with careful hands, placing them into shallow cradles where they can attach and grow. They work with patience that makes you feel slightly called out, because you realize how often you rush without meaning to, like your body is trying to outrun its own stress. Here, speed would look ridiculous. Here, haste would be the only rude thing. You pass a long wall of living shell. It's a mosaic of layered nacre plates, each plate holding a tiny pocket of water and algae. The wall glows gently, and you notice it's positioned to face inward toward the city's homes. It's a light source, yes, but also something else. It's a filter. Water flows behind it, and as it does, the algae pockets shimmer and shift, absorbing particulates, smoothing the currents. It's a biological purifier disguised as art. A subtle warmth brushes your skin as you step closer. Not heat like a lamp, but a mild, pleasant radiance, like standing near sun-warmed stone at dusk. Your muscles release a fraction. Your jaw unclenches without asking your permission. You hate how good it feels. Hate it in the way you hate realizing you've been carrying tension for so long it started to feel normal. Further along, the terrace opens into a garden court where the floor is a shallow sheet of water over crystal. Beneath it, patterns run like veins, thin lines of light that converge in spirals. At the center, a low mound of coral rises, and on it grows a cluster of translucent plants that glow with a deep, steady luminescence. They look almost like underwater lilies, but their petals are narrower, more geometric, like folded paper made from moonlight. You sense what this place is meant for before you can name it. It's for restoration. Not dramatic healing, not miracles, just the quiet reset that happens when your environment stops attacking you. The locals move through the court slowly, letting the light wash over them. Some pause at the edge, hands in the shallow water, letting the glow climb their skin. No one performs. No one tries to look spiritual about it. They simply accept what the gardens provide. You do the same. You kneel, and your fingertips enter the water. It's cool at first, then gently warm, as if the crystal beneath is holding a calm pulse. Light swirls around your fingers in soft ribbons. The sensation isn't magical in a flashy way. It's physiological, honest, like your body is being reminded of a baseline it forgot existed. When you stand again, you notice a detail you missed earlier. Tiny motes drifting in the water above the gardens, like dust in sunlight, except these motes glow faintly and move with purpose. They flow along the channels, clustering where the water needs cleaning, dispersing where the glow needs spreading. Microlife engineered to maintain serenity. Atlantis doesn't fight the sea. It collaborates with it at every scale, from grand ring-canals down to these small, obedient lights. You resume your walk, and the path curves toward the inner ring. The gardens continue beside you, their glow steady now, as if they've accepted you into their system. You feel the city guiding you inward again, softly, wordlessly, through living corridors of kelp and crystal, as though you're being escorted not toward a destination, but toward a deeper calm you didn't think you deserved. The sea garden path narrows and tilts gently downward, guiding you toward the canal again, and you realize Atlantis prefers transitions that feel like a slow stretch rather than a sudden turn. The terrace stones become smoother, the crystal buds along the edges more frequent, and the glow shifts from garden green to a calmer, paler blue, an unspoken sign that you're approaching water meant for travel rather than cultivation. Ahead, the ring canal is busy in the quietest possible way. Several crescent crafts glide along the crystal channel, each moving with precise spacing, as if the city has taught them all the same polite distance. No wakes slap the canal walls. No frantic corrections. Each craft slides like a thought that doesn't want to wake you. You step onto a small docking spur that reaches into the canal, its surface etched with thin lines that form a simple grid. At first you think it's decorative. Then you notice caretakers placing small lanterns, glass spheres with a soft inner glow, onto certain grid intersections. A lantern goes down. Another follows a few spaces away. Then a third. The pattern is measured, and the canal lights respond. The crystal rim beside the dock brightens, then dims, then holds steady. This is the first ritual you learn. The canal speaks in light, and the lanterns are its punctuation. A craft approaches without ever looking like it's approaching. One moment it's part of the blue flow, the next it's beside you, aligned perfectly with the dock. Along its edge, crystals blink in a sequence, 2 short pulses, one long, then stillness. You don't know the code, but your body reads the intent, safe to board, safe to enter the current. You step onto the craft, and the grid beneath your feet on the dock catches a faint afterglow, like it's recording your departure. The craft holds you as if it has been calibrated to your weight and mood. Your feet settle. Your shoulders drop. The city is gentle in the same way a good host is gentle, anticipating needs, removing friction, never making a big deal out of it. As the craft slides away, you notice the lanterns on the dock shifting position. A caretaker lifts one and moves it a single square. The canal rim answers with a soft pulse. The craft's path adjusts by the smallest angle, aligning into a lane you hadn't noticed before, an invisible corridor within the canal's flow. Atlantis doesn't shout instructions. It tunes the environment so you naturally do the right thing. You glide past a series of low arches that bridge the canal. They're wide enough for multiple crafts to pass beneath, yet they keep the space feeling intimate, like a corridor in a quiet home. Each arch has a crystal inlay along its underside, and as you pass, the crystals brighten for a second, just a second, then fade. A greeting. A scan. A confirmation that you belong in this motion. Your craft merges into a gentle spiral current, and you begin to understand the tide timing that runs the city. The canal flow isn't constant like a machine. It swells and eases in waves, synced with the ocean beyond and with the city's inner demands. When the flow strengthens, crafts drift faster without effort. When it eases, they slow naturally, creating a rhythm that keeps everything calm. The locals seem to know this rhythm in their bones. You watch a caretaker step onto a dock, place a lantern, and wait, not impatiently, not performing stillness, just waiting in the way a tree waits. A moment later, a current swell arrives, and 3 crafts glide in at once, perfectly timed, each taking a different spur as if choreographed. The caretaker moves the lantern 1 square, and the flow splits, guiding the crafts onward. It's traffic management, but the only sound is water and your own softened breath. You pass another dock where a row of lanterns floats just above the canal surface, tethered by thin crystal threads. Each lantern's glow is slightly different, some warmer, some cooler, and you realize the color is part of the code. Warm light marks outbound routes toward the outer ring terraces. Cool light marks inward routes toward the city's core. A faint green-blue flicker suggests maintenance lanes, used by caretakers tending crystal seams beneath the canal. Everything is signaling, and none of it is stressful. A small school of ribbon creatures, those sleek, silver living bands, drifts alongside your craft for a while, riding the current with you. They weave near the canal rim, occasionally brushing past the crystal inlay that pulses faintly. When they pass, the rim glows a shade brighter, as if the creatures are part of the system too, assisting with energy transfer or cleaning microfilm off the surface. The city's rituals include its animals, its plants, its water. Even the smallest movement is invited to cooperate. As you approach a junction between rings, the canal opens into a circular node where multiple channels meet. Here, the light codes become richer. Lanterns float in clusters, and the canal rim pulses in repeating patterns that remind you of slow heartbeats. Your craft decelerates, not abruptly but with that gentle, "You're safe" feeling, and it begins to drift in a slow loop, waiting for its turn. You notice other crafts doing the same, circling the node like calm planets. No one cuts across. No one gets ahead. The ritual is built to remove the concept of rushing entirely. Your craft's rim crystals blink once, then hold, and you feel the system acknowledging your presence. One more traveler in the loop, no drama required. A caretaker on a central platform holds a lantern aloft for a moment. Its glow shifts from warm to cool, then back to warm, like breathing. The canal responds. The loop current eases, and your craft slides toward the inner channel opening, guided by a path of slightly brighter light along the rim. You follow it the way you follow a lullaby, not by thinking, but by letting yourself be carried. As you move into the inner ring canal, you feel the city's scale change. The outer ring was spacious, garden-heavy, open to the broad ocean above. The inner ring feels more intimate, more curated. The crystal here is thicker, the glow steadier, the arches closer together. You pass under a bridge where the underside is etched with spiral grooves, and as you glide beneath, the grooves catch your craft's glow and scatter it like soft stars. You begin to see the deeper custom behind all this. Atlantis has trained itself to be considerate. The ritual isn't only about efficiency. It's about never jolting anyone's nervous system. Every signal is slow enough to be read without anxiety. Every turn is wide enough to be taken without fear. Every pause is framed as normal, not as an interruption. And because the city is built around these gentle rules, you find yourself matching them. Your thoughts slow to the canal's pace. Your attention becomes softer, wider, less jagged. You stop scanning for threats that aren't there. You stop anticipating chaos that never arrives. By the time your craft reaches another docking spur, you're not just traveling through Atlantis. You're being taught how to move through anything, quietly, patiently, with light instead of noise. You step off the craft onto the inner ring platform, and the lanterns nearby glow in a steady, welcoming pulse, as if the city is saying, "Good, you're learning." The inner ring platform feels like the threshold of a home rather than a station. The dock is smaller, the crystal posts closer, and the light is warmer, still ocean cool, but softened, as if filtered through pearl. You step forward, and the canal behind you continues its slow, disciplined flow, already forgetting you in the healthiest way possible. You have passed through, and the system remains calm. A path leads away from the water into a neighborhood of shell-glass domes. From a distance, the domes look like pale bubbles caught mid-rise. Up close, you see their structure. Layered panels of translucent material, curved like scalloped shells and fused together along seams that glow faintly. The glow isn't flashy. It's the kind of light you'd want near your bed, steady enough to comfort, dim enough to let your thoughts dissolve. The stone beneath your feet changes too. The walkway is still smooth, but now it has a subtle warmth, like sunlit tiles that retained a day's heat. It grounds you. It makes you feel less like you're floating through a dream and more like you're walking somewhere real, somewhere lived in. You pass a cluster of low planters where small sea ferns grow, short, delicate fronds that shimmer at their tips. They release a faint mineral fragrance, clean and slightly sweet. It reminds you of wet limestone, of seaside cliffs after rain, of that moment when the air feels newly washed and you can finally unclench. The neighborhood isn't silent because nothing happens. It's silent because everything happens softly. You notice movements behind shell glass walls, silhouettes shifting, hands lifting trays, someone pausing near a light niche, someone tending a small indoor pool where glow petals drift in slow circles. The domes are private without being isolating, their translucency a gentle compromise. You sense life without intruding on it. A figure approaches along the path, their posture unhurried, their steps timed to the city's rhythm. They don't stop you with a raised hand or a stern look. Instead, they tilt a small lantern, one of those glass spheres, toward a particular side lane. The lantern's glow warms by a shade, and the crystal seam of the lane brightens in response, marking it as your route. You follow, because the city has taught you that light is instruction, and instruction can be kind. The lane curves between domes, each one shaped slightly differently, as if the architecture allows personality without allowing chaos. Some domes have thicker shell panels that catch the glow and turn it creamy. Others have thinner panels that shimmer, revealing the rippling water above like a ceiling made of slow-moving silk. The seams between panels form spiral patterns, consistent enough to feel cohesive, varied enough to feel alive. You begin to notice small practical details that make you weirdly emotional, in the way only thoughtful design can. The entrances are low and rounded, like shells themselves, and each has a shallow basin beside it, water collected from the canal, filtered through sea garden moss. People dip their hands in as they enter, leaving behind traces of salt and grit. A cleanliness ritual, yes, but also a reset. Touch water, slow down, come inside calmer than you arrived. Inside one dome, you glimpse a series of alcoves in the wall, each holding a crystal pebble that glows gently. Some pebbles are brighter, some dimmer. They're not decoration, they're timers. You realize the households here don't measure time in loud ticks and alerts. They measure it in light fading and blooming, a rhythm that keeps the nervous system steady. You reach a small communal terrace, a shared space between several domes. The floor is a shallow sheet of water over crystal, like the garden court you saw earlier, but here it's warmed slightly, and the glow is a soft amber. People move through it barefoot, letting the warmth sink into their soles. Along the terrace edge, low tables hold covered trays. When someone lifts a cover, a faint plume of aroma drifts out. Brine bread, you think, though you don't know the word yet. Warm, salty, with a sweetness that feels like it comes from mineral-rich sea plants. You aren't offered anything with a flourish. Instead, a tray is slid gently toward you, positioned at a comfortable reach. The cover lifts, and you see thin slices of pale bread, the surface speckled with tiny crystal grains that catch the light. Beside it, small cups hold a thick, clear broth with floating pearl seed. Those ocean-born seeds you saw earlier, now softened, translucent, and faintly glowing. It looks like something between soup and tea, the kind of food meant to nourish without demanding digestion drama. You eat slowly. The brine bread is warm and tender, with a crisp edge that dissolves into softness. The crystal grains melt on your tongue, releasing a clean saltiness that tastes like the sea, but without the harshness of raw salt. The broth is soothing. It tastes like kelp, like mineral water, like the comforting idea of a tide coming in and washing everything clean. Your stomach relaxes, and you realize you've been living with subtle tension there too, like a permanent brace. Around you, the locals continue their household rhythms. Someone rinses trays in a shallow channel that runs along the terrace, the water carrying crumbs away into a filter bed of moss. Someone else tends a small indoor garden of glow petals, plucking one that has dimmed and placing it into a different pool where it can recover. You watch a person touch a wall niche and adjust a crystal pebble, dimming the room by a shade. It's the same kind of care you'd give to a sleeping child's blanket, tiny adjustments to keep comfort uninterrupted. You notice the absence of clutter, not because the people are minimalist monks, because the city's systems remove the need for excess. Water flows where it's needed. Light appears where it's needed. Food arrives through calm, reliable rituals. When your world is stable, you don't hoard. You don't panic stock. You don't surround yourself with backup plans shaped like objects. A soft vibration hums through the terrace floor, barely there, like a distant purr. It's not unpleasant. It's a steady resonance that seems to come from deeper in the city, carried through stone and crystal. You sense it more than you hear it, and your body responds by sinking another notch toward rest. The city's heartbeat is low and consistent, and being near it makes your own feel less erratic. As you finish your meal, a caretaker, maybe the same figure who guided you, places a small crystal bead near your place. It glows faintly, a color that matches the inner ring's warm light. Not a gift in the dramatic sense. a marker. A quiet sign that you're being included, that the neighborhood has registered you as someone who belongs here for at least this stretch of the night. You hold the bead, and it warms gently in your palm, syncing with that deeper vibration underfoot. You realize the welcome you're receiving isn't performative hospitality. It's integration. Atlantis is folding you into its patterns: water, light, food, rhythm, until you stop feeling like an outsider and start feeling like a person who can finally stop bracing. The path onward curves toward the market terraces, and you follow it with the crystal bead's warmth in your hand, already carrying the neighborhood's calm into whatever comes next. The warmth of the shell-glass neighborhood follows you like a shawl as you step back onto the inner ring walkway. The crystal bead in your palm pulses faintly, almost in time with the low resonance under the stone, and it makes you feel guided without feeling managed. You move toward the market terraces where the glow grows slightly brighter, not harshly, but with that purposeful, awake enough to function, clarity. The market doesn't announce itself with banners or noise. It arrives as a change in scent and texture. The air becomes richer, salt, yes, but now layered with warm mineral sweetness, faint smoke from seawood resin, and something citrus-like that you can't place because it's not a land citrus at all. The walkway widens into a broad terrace where shallow channels of water run in graceful curves between stalls. The channels are clear and slow-moving, carrying away spills, refreshing the air, and keeping everything clean without anyone needing to fuss. Stalls are built from pale stone and shell glass, each one shaped like a half-open clam. Inside, goods rest on beds of damp moss or in shallow crystal basins that keep them cool. There's a soft glow everywhere, but each stall has its own tone: greenish near the kelp foods, pearly near the seed trays, warmer amber near the resin crafts. Light as signage, light as language. You move through the first aisle and find yourself surrounded by ocean-grown foods that look both familiar and alien, the way a dream remixes your kitchen. There are loaves of brine bread stacked in neat spirals, their crusts speckled with tiny crystalline grains. There are thin sheets of dried kelp folded like paper, stamped with delicate spiral patterns, edible, apparently, but also used as wrappers. There are bowls of pearl seed in different stages, raw and glossy, soaked and translucent, steamed until they glow softly like tiny moons. A caretaker tends a stall where a shallow pool holds floating discs, those glow petals, but here they're smaller and denser, arranged in clusters like bouquets. Some are pale blue, some green, some a faint violet that feels cooler against your eyes. You realize these aren't just decorative petals. They're energy carriers, like edible light or medicinal calm, cultivated and sorted with precision. You pause near a stall that offers a drink. The vessel is a narrow shell cup, smooth and cool. Inside is a clear liquid with faint swirling light, subtle, like a slow aurora trapped in water. You sip. The taste is clean and mineral, with a gentle sweetness that arrives late, like a shy smile. It settles in your chest, easing that background tightness you barely noticed anymore, because it had become your normal. Atlantis keeps undoing your normal. The market's most striking feature isn't the goods. It's the people. They move like water. No one jostles. No one hovers aggressively. Transactions happen with small gestures, placing an item down, sliding a bead across a tray, adjusting a lantern's position. The soundscape is soft. The faint lap of channel water, the quiet clink of shell against crystal, the occasional shimmer of a lantern being set into a dark groove. You notice the beads, different from the one in your palm, but similar in purpose. People carry small strings of them, each bead a different hue. The hue matches the stall lighting. You infer the system. These beads represent credits or exchange units, encoded by light frequency rather than by printed numbers. It's hard to scam someone when the currency literally glows with verifiable properties. Atlantis, even in commerce, is allergic to stress. At one stall, artisans craft objects that look like jewelry and tools at the same time. Rings of shell glass inset with tiny crystal nodes. Combs with translucent teeth that catch and redistribute light. Thin, flexible strips of sea silk that shimmer and cling gently to skin, used for clothing, bandages, or both. The artisan's hands move slowly, not because they're slow people, but because precision here is a form of respect. You drift onward and pass a stall where coral is shaped, carefully, ethically, grown rather than carved. Coral branches are trained into spirals and arcs, then harvested in segments, so the living base continues to grow. The harvested pieces become frames for lanterns or supports for indoor pools. A small plaque of crystal sits beside the display, etched with tiny symbols. You can't read them, but you feel their intent, provenance, care, continuation. Nothing here feels ripped from the sea. Everything feels negotiated with it. You reach a central market basin where several aisles converge, and the channels of water form a geometric flower pattern. At the basin's center, a low mound of crystal rises, and along its surface small lights pulse in repeating sequences. The pulses are slow and regular, like a city clock designed to soothe rather than push. People glance at it occasionally, then adjust their pace to match, as if the market itself sets the tempo of human movement. A subtle thing happens as you walk. The bead in your palm warms when you pause near certain stalls, then cools when you move away. It's responding to something, maybe proximity to particular light frequencies, maybe a recognition system that guides visitors to what they need. You find this both comforting and slightly unnerving, because the last time something guided you to what you need, it was an algorithm that wanted your attention for profit. Atlantis is different. Its guidance feels like a blanket, not a hook. You stop near a stall lined with small crystal jars. Inside each jar, fine powders shimmer faintly. One is pale gold. Another is cool white. Another is a soft green that looks like crushed sea light. These are seasonings, medicines, pigments, maybe all three. The jars are labeled not with words but with tiny spiral marks and dot patterns. A caretaker lifts one jar, tilts it slightly, and you see the powder shift like liquid sand, catching the lantern glow and throwing it back in tiny sparks. Beside the jars, there are small packets of resin, seawood resin, the scent you noticed earlier. It's used for sealing, for scenting, for calming. You bring it near your face and inhale gently. The aroma is warm and grounding, like cedar and salt had a quiet child. Your shoulders lower again. You're beginning to suspect Atlantis is actively conspiring to make you less tense, and honestly, it's working. You move into the crafts aisle where objects meant for the city's canals are sold: lantern housings, crystal thread spools, small comb-like tools for cleaning seams, and flexible bands of sea silk used to tether floating lanterns. Everything is made to be repaired, reused, retuned. Nothing feels disposable. In a place where maintenance is ritual, You don't throw things away like tantrums. You care for them until they're done, and even then, you return them to the system. As you loop back toward the edge of the market terrace, you realize you've been walking for a while without fatigue. The air is clean. The surfaces are warm in a gentle way. The light never strains your eyes. The flow of people never activates your social defenses. This market isn't a gauntlet. It's a quiet circulation of nourishment and craft, designed to leave you steadier than you arrived. You keep the crystal bead in your hand, and as you step away from the market's central basin, it pulses once, soft, approving, like a calm little reminder that you are still being guided inward, toward deeper knowledge, deeper rings, deeper calm. Leaving the market feels like stepping out of a warm, fragrant kitchen into a quiet hallway. Still comfort, but less distraction. The inner ring walkway guides you toward a calmer district where stalls thin out and the terraces become more spacious. The lighting shifts cooler again, leaning toward pearl blue, and the faint scent of resin gives way to something cleaner, wet stone, filtered water, and the almost metallic freshness of crystal seams. Ahead, the architecture changes. The shell glass domes become lower and more elongated, shaped like smooth river stones set into the terrace. The paths here curve in wide arcs, and the channels of water that run beside them are narrower, clearer, and more carefully maintained. Everything looks deliberate, like a place designed for attention. You sense the tide scribes before you see them, because the sound of water changes again, less whisper, more hush. The current here is slower, and it slides over crystal in a way that creates a faint, steady tone, like the lowest note of a singing bowl held underwater. It's subtle enough to be ignored, but your body doesn't ignore it. It recognizes it as the kind of sound that makes thoughts line up instead of collide. You arrive at a wide terrace that feels like a temple without the performance. No towering pillars. No intimidating steps. Instead, a broad court of shallow pools arranged in concentric circles, mirroring the ring-canals themselves. Each pool is framed by crystal rims that glow softly, and the water inside is so still it looks solid, like a sheet of dark glass. At the center of the court, a larger pool holds a faint, slow spiral of light. It doesn't move like a current. It moves like memory, drifting, returning, rearranging itself as if the water is thinking. Figures move around the pools in unhurried patterns. They wear garments that shimmer faintly, not ornate, but functional. Sea silk layers that repel stray droplets, crystal thread bands around wrists that catch light and bend it inward. Their hands hover over the pool's surfaces without touching, and you realize they're listening to the water the way a musician listens to an instrument, waiting for the smallest change, the faintest signal. A caretaker guides you to the edge of an outer pool, not by pulling you, but by standing where they want you to stand and letting the light show you the rest. A small lantern sphere rests near the rim. Its glow is dimmer than the markets, calmer than the canals. It feels like library lighting, designed to keep you awake just enough to understand. You lean over the pool, and the water reflects your face, softened by the pearl blue glow. Then the reflection shifts. Not because you moved, but because something beneath the surface changes. A subtle ripple that spreads outward in perfect circles, then fades. The ripple isn't random. It's too clean, too intentional, like a sentence written in waves. You watch, and the ripple pattern repeats. 2 circles, pause, 1 circle, pause, a long, slow ring that expands and dissolves. Your mind tries to turn it into words, but Atlantis isn't asking you to translate. It's asking you to perceive. You realize the pools aren't just water. They're tuned reservoirs. The crystal rims and the stone beneath create a controlled environment where tiny disturbances can be recorded and read. The tide scribes use them the way you use ink and paper, except their ink is motion, and their paper is stillness. A figure moves their hand just above the surface, and the water responds with a faint shimmer, like it recognizes the gesture. A sequence of ripples blooms outward, complex, layered, with smaller waves riding the larger ones. You feel it in your chest, that low resonance matching the city's deeper heartbeat. The ripples are not merely visual. They carry vibration. They carry tone. They carry the emotional texture of what they represent. Without dialogue, you still understand the concept. These pools hold the city's history not as a list of events, but as patterns of cause and effect. Water remembers pressure. Crystal remembers vibration. Together, they can preserve the shape of moments. You shift your focus to another pool nearby. Its surface is darker, almost black, and the glow around its rim is cooler. Beneath the surface, faint lines of light drift like slow-moving threads. Then, as if noticing you, the pool produces a gentle ripple, and the threads align into a shape, a ring, then another ring, then a spiral. It's the city's own geometry appearing as memory. Your breath slows. You feel like you're watching time breathe. As you move along the court, you notice that some pools are brighter than others. Some are almost dormant, their surfaces perfectly still. Those, you sense, hold older memories, events that have settled, their ripples smoothed by centuries of quiet. Other pools are alive with faint motion, like a breeze under glass. Those hold recent records, market shifts, garden maintenance cycles, canal traffic rhythms. Atlantis doesn't separate the sacred from the mundane. It records both, because both matter in a system built on continuity. You come to a pool whose rim glows faintly gold, warmer than the others. The water inside is not still. It holds a slow, pulsing spiral of light that thickens and thins, like a heartbeat made visible. You feel the crystal bead in your hand respond, warming, then pulsing once, then settling. The city is telling you, this is important. You lean closer, and the pool's surface responds with a ripple that spreads outward, then curls inward, forming a loop. The motion repeats, each time slightly different, as if the memory is not a fixed photograph but a living thing that can be revisited from different angles. You sense depth behind it, layers of engineering, centuries of maintenance, careful calibrations. This memory is tied to the city's core, to whatever produces that steady resonance underfoot. Orichalcum, you think, not as a word spoken, but as a concept the city has already placed in your mind. Warm metal, living light, a vault. You don't see images of kings or battles. Atlantis isn't indulging in melodrama. Instead, the pool shows you a sequence of ripples that look like tuning, waves aligning, then stabilizing, then dispersing into calm. It's the memory of a system being balanced. The memory of something powerful being kept gentle. You understand something else too. The tide scribes aren't hoarding knowledge to feel important. Their work is maintenance. They preserve patterns so the city can remain stable. They study ripples so they can predict imbalances. They record the subtle signs before a problem becomes noise. You walk the court's outer ring and feel your mind adjust to this way of remembering. In your world, history is often loud: dates, headlines, arguments. Here, history is a quiet physics of care. It's the record of how water was guided, how light was tuned, how people chose patience over panic. By the time you step away from the memory pools, you feel a calm clarity settle in you, like sediment finally sinking. You still don't know everything, but you feel the city inviting you deeper, toward the source of that golden pulse, toward the place where the most important ripples begin. The tight scribe's court fades behind you as the path curves inward, and you feel the city's pulse grow slightly more present, not louder, just closer, like you've moved from hearing a heartbeat through a wall to resting your cheek against a warm chest. The crystal bead in your hand has been calm for a while, but now it brightens in tiny increments, as if it's sinking to a deeper rhythm and quietly confirming you're on the right track. The architecture tightens. The terraces become narrower, the shell-glass domes fewer. Here, Atlantis feels less like a neighborhood and more like a spine, structural, essential, quietly guarded by design rather than by force. The canal runs alongside you again, but it's not wide and scenic like the outer rings. It's a precise channel of crystal water, flanked by low walls etched with spiral grooves that catch and soften the glow. Every surface seems tuned to reduce turbulence, both physical and emotional. You pass beneath an arch where the crystal inlay is darker, almost smoky. The air tastes subtly different too, still clean, still salty, but with a faint metallic sweetness that sits on the back of your tongue. It's not unpleasant. It's like the smell of warm coins, except gentler, less sharp, as if the metal here has been taught manners. A small alcove opens on your right, and the path nudges you into it the way a good story nudges you toward a detail you're meant to notice. The alcove holds a shallow basin of crystal water, and at its center rests a piece of material that doesn't look like anything else in Atlantis. It isn't shell glass. It isn't coral. It isn't the pale stone. It's a metal, warm-toned, like gold diluted with sunset. Its surface isn't mirror smooth. It has a soft depth to it, like the light is sinking slightly into the metal before returning. And it glows, not with a surface coating, but with an internal ember-like steadiness, as if the metal has a heart and it's keeping a slow, patient beat. Orichalcum doesn't scream, "Ancient treasure." It murmurs, "Carefully managed power." You draw closer, and the warmth radiates gently into your skin, not hot, not dangerous, just present. The metal seems to hum at the same frequency you've been feeling through the floors and canals, a low resonance that steadies your breath. You notice that the water in the basin is perfectly still, and yet faint rings of light ripple across the metal's surface, drifting outward and fading. It's as if the orichalcum is responding to the city's pulse, absorbing it, shaping it, returning it as calm. A caretaker stands nearby, their posture relaxed, their hands resting at their sides. They don't need to tell you anything. The basin itself is the lesson, and you are being allowed to witness it because Atlantis has decided you can handle this level of truth without turning it into panic. You look more closely at the orichalcum piece. Tiny spiral grooves are etched into it, similar to the ones you've seen throughout the city, but finer, more precise. The grooves form nested rings, and within each ring are micro patterns, dots, lines, and gentle curves that look like a language designed for vibration rather than for speech. When the city's pulse shifts, subtle changes you feel more than notice. The glow inside the metal shifts too, like a slow response. The metal isn't just conducting energy, it's regulating it. You remember the tide scribe's golden rimmed pool, the spiral of light, the pattern of tuning. This is the physical counterpart to that memory. Orichalcum is the city's stabilizer, the keeper of gentle resonance. It's power, yes, but power domesticated into something that feels like a lullaby. You step away from the basin and continue along the path, and now you begin to notice orichalcum everywhere, but only in small, strategic places. It lines a seam beneath a bridge, just a thin strip, like stitching. It forms the core of a lantern post, hidden beneath shell glass casings so the light remains soft. It appears as a small node at the base of a canal junction, embedded deep in crystal so it can pulse without being touched. The metal is never used as ornament. It's used as function. Atlantis doesn't worship power. It engineers it into calm. The air grows slightly warmer as you approach a broader terrace. Here, the walkway opens into a chamber-like space with high, curved walls of pale stone and crystal inlay. The walls are not solid barriers. They are acoustic and vibrational guides. You can feel it. The city's hum becomes smoother, more coherent, as if scattered vibrations are being collected and aligned. At the chamber's center, a column rises, shell glass wrapped around an inner core that glows faintly gold. Orichalcum again, but encased, restrained, partnered with crystal to distribute its resonance. The column's glow is steady, and the water in the shallow channels around it flows in slow spirals, as if orbiting. The channel pattern mirrors the ring-canals, and you realize Atlantis is fractal in its design. Rings within rings, spirals within spirals, calm maintained by repetition and tuning. You place your hand on the column's shell glass casing. It's warm, not hot. Warm like a mug held between palms on a cold night. The warmth rises into your wrist, and your pulse matches the column's steadiness. For a moment, your body feels like it's borrowing calm from the architecture. You almost laugh at the idea, because in your world, buildings rarely offer emotional support unless you count fluorescent lighting as a form of suffering. The column's glow shifts subtly, and the shallow channels around it brighten a shade, then settle. You understand the implication. Orichalcum is responsive. It senses load, demand, and balance. It doesn't merely power Atlantis, it listens to it. It regulates the city's nervous system the way your own vagus nerve tries to regulate you, quietly, constantly, without applause. You walk along the chamber's edge and notice small maintenance tools resting in niches, comb-like crystal instruments, lantern spheres, thin bands of sea silk. Everything is ready for caretakers to adjust the system with gentle precision. No emergency kits. No alarms. Just steady preparedness. And then you notice something else. The orichalcum glow is not uniform. In some seams it's brighter, in others dimmer. It's as if the city is distributing its strength where it's needed, not hoarding it in one place. That distribution is a philosophy as much as an engineering choice. Atlantis remains calm because its power is shared through the rings, not concentrated in a single point of failure. Still, your mind circles back to the word you can't unthink now, vault. There is a core beneath all of this, A place where orichalcum isn't a thin seam or a hidden node, but a concentrated heart. The tight scribe's golden pool wasn't showing you a column or a seam. It was showing you something deeper, something that requires constant tuning, constant care. As you leave the chamber and return to the inner ring path, the crystal bead in your hand pulses again, soft, steady, insistent. The city is guiding you onward, deeper inward, toward the source of the resonance. And you feel, in the calmest way possible, that you are being brought closer to a responsibility you haven't agreed to yet, but will probably accept anyway. Because Atlantis makes duty feel like care instead of like burden. The path leads you downward in a way that barely registers as descent. Atlantis refuses stairs that make you feel like you're going somewhere ominous. Instead, the floor slopes gently, and the walls curve inward like a protective shell. The light shifts cooler again, pearl blue with faint silver highlights, and the canal beside you narrows, becoming less scenic and more precise, like the city is moving you from the living room into the utility room, except the utility room is still gorgeous because Atlantis apparently has standards. A thin seam of orichalcum runs along the base of the wall, barely visible unless you look for it. It pulses faintly, and the pulse travels ahead of you like a quiet escort. The crystal bead in your hand warms in sympathy, and you realize it's acting like a pass, a permission slip, a gentle, "Yes, this one is allowed to see." You enter a corridor where the air feels different, not stale, not heavy, just more neutral. The scent of sea gardens fades. In its place is the clean smell of crystal and moving water, like a fresh glass rinsed and set upside down to dry. The corridor walls are lined with translucent panels that glow from within, and behind them you glimpse flowing channels, thin streams of water running in parallel lines, each stream catching light in a slightly different tone. This is the engine house, though nothing here sounds like an engine. It's an organ system, a network of channels and filters and resonance guides that keep the ring-canals clear, bright, and calm. You feel the difference immediately. The hum underfoot becomes more structured, like the city's heartbeat is being monitored and smoothed here. A caretaker walks ahead of you, not leading like a commander, but moving at a pace that naturally sets yours. They pause at a panel and touch a small crystal node embedded in the wall. The panel brightens, revealing more of the channel behind it. Water flows through that channel in a slow spiral pattern, and along the stream tiny motes drift, those microlights you saw in the sea gardens, moving with purpose, clustering where the stream narrows, dispersing where it widens. You stop and watch, and you realize the motes aren't random life. They're part of a filtration system. They gather microparticles, they break down biofilm, they maintain clarity. Atlantis doesn't rely on harsh chemicals. It uses tuned biology and crystal guidance, turning cleaning into a quiet ecosystem. The corridor opens into a wider chamber where multiple channels converge. Here, the floor is crystal, thick, transparent, and faintly warm, and beneath it you see the canals themselves. Not the scenic surface you rode earlier, but the underlayers, supporting crystal ribs, spiral grooves, and embedded orichalcum nodes that pulse at intervals. The nodes are spaced like beads on a string, each one regulating resonance and flows so the water above remains smooth. You look down and see your reflection faintly in the crystal floor, overlaid on the canal structures beneath. It's a weirdly grounding image, you, a soft human blur, standing above a city's careful skeleton. You feel small, but not insignificant. More like you've been allowed into a backstage area where quiet professionals keep beauty functioning. Along the chamber's edges, maintenance stations sit in calm readiness. Tools rest in niches: crystal combs, sea silk bands, lantern spheres, small trays of pearl seed used to feed the microlife. Everything is arranged like a ritual altar, but it's practical. In Atlantis, maintenance is sacred because it prevents emergencies, and emergencies are basically the rudest thing imaginable. You notice a section of channel where the water's glow is slightly dimmer. It's subtle enough that a casual eye would miss it. The caretakers don't miss it. One of them lowers a tool, a thin crystal rod, into a small access port. The rod touches the flowing stream, and the stream's glow shifts, brightening in slow increments. A second caretaker sprinkles a pinch of fine green powder, like the market jars, into a nearby feeder channel. The powder disperses, and the micromotes cluster around it, feeding, multiplying, then drifting outward to the dim section. It's like watching a garden being tended, except the garden is the canal's clarity. You follow the corridor deeper. The walls curve, and the channels behind the panels become more numerous. Some carry fresh ocean water filtered through sea garden beds. Others carry warm mineral water used to regulate temperature in certain districts. Some channels carry light itself, thin streams of glowing particles moving along crystal grooves, distributing illumination to lantern posts and dome seams. You realize the ring-canals are not just roads. They're arteries. They distribute movement, water, light, and calm. The engine house is where those arteries are monitored and tuned. A low arch leads you into a narrow maintenance passage that runs directly alongside the canal wall. Here, you can touch the canal's crystal rim from the inside. The rim is thick, layered, and etched with fine spiral patterns. As you trail your fingers lightly along it, you feel a faint vibration, steady, soothing, like the purr you felt in the neighborhood terrace. The vibration is the canal's resonance, kept gentle by those orichalcum nodes beneath. You pass small windows cut into the canal wall. Through them, you see the canal surface above, and for a moment you glimpse a crescent craft gliding past, the underside of its hull shimmering. The canal looks effortless from up there. From down here, you see the effort, quiet, constant, patient. You come to a junction where the passage meets a control alcove. It's not a control room with screens and alerts. It's a quiet niche with a shallow pool, another tuned reservoir, where water flows in miniature spirals. Above the pool, a set of lantern spheres hang in a vertical line, each glowing at a different intensity. Their brightness changes slowly, like a living graph. You understand. The caretakers read the canal's status through light and water patterns. If a segment grows cloudy, a lantern dims. If a current speeds too much, a spiral tightens. They don't need alarms because they're always listening. The whole system is built to keep problems small, to keep corrections gentle, to keep the city's pulse smooth. As you stand there, you feel your crystal bead respond again, warming, then pulsing once. You glance at the lantern line, and one sphere shifts a shade dimmer, then stabilizes. Not a crisis. Just a note. A whisper of imbalance. The caretakers are just a crystal node, and the sphere brightens back to baseline. You can't help noticing how your own body has started to mirror this system. You're learning to detect your own small imbalances, the tightness in your jaw, the shallow breath. The way your thoughts sometimes speed up for no reason, and you're learning that you can adjust them gently, without panic, the way Atlantis adjusts its canals. The corridor begins to slope upward again, guiding you back toward open terraces. As you emerge, you feel the city's resonance still steady beneath you, and you carry a new respect for the hidden work that makes the visible beauty possible. The ring canals above remain crystal clear and glowing, not by myth, but by ritual maintenance, by caretakers who treat clarity as a form of kindness. And somewhere deeper, beneath even this engine house, you sense the orichalcum heart that needs the most tuning of all. The city's pulse remains calm, but you can feel the faintest tremor of anticipation, like the system is preparing you for the next ring inward. You surface from the engine house into open terraces and feel the city's mood shift, subtle as a shoulder relaxing. The pro-blue lighting warms by a fraction, the canal current broadens into a gentler glide, and the air carries that faint seawood resin note again, clean salt with a grounding warmth. Like Atlantis has decided it's time to stop thinking about seams and start remembering why it keeps them perfect. Lantern spheres appear everywhere. They're the same glass orbs you've seen on docks and junctions, but tonight each one holds a shell glass cradle and a cluster of glow petals, floating like a miniature sea garden inside a moon. The petals pulse softly, and you catch yourself matching their rhythm the way you match a slow breath when you finally lie down and stop pretending you're fine. The inner ring walkway widens. Sea gardens thicken along the canal edge, kelp trained into arching lanes that look like living corridors. Above, the ocean surface scatters moonlight into trembling coins. Below, the crystal canal holds that light steady, as if the water itself has learned not to fidget. You follow the curve without needing a map. The city's geometry is its own guidance. The festival court isn't a plaza with a stage. It's a ring basin where the canal opens into a calm pool and then narrows again, continuing its loop. Crystal posts line the rim, each capped with a fixed glow. Between them, shallow channels feed into the sea gardens, circulating water through algae and coral so even celebration stays clean. Even drifting light gets supported by living filters. People gather in loose arcs around the basin. No one crowds. No one presses. Caretakers move through with trays of lantern spheres cushioned in damp moss so glass never clinks. Their pace is slow enough to feel like instruction. Nothing soothing needs to be rushed. Your crystal bead warms in your palm, and a lantern sphere is set beside you on stone etched with a faint grid. The sphere's inner petals brighten a shade when it rests there, as if the terrace is tuned to support it. You lift it carefully. It's cool against your fingers, but not cold. The petals radiate a mild warmth that spreads into your fingertips. Along the rim, others lift lanterns at roughly the same time. Not perfectly synchronized, but close enough that the motion feels like a slow wave. Somewhere under the terrace, a thin orichalcum seam pulses once, low, steady, and the basin water brightens by a fraction, like an inhale before a song you don't need words to understand. You step to the edge and lower your lantern into the basin. It floats immediately, buoyed by its cradle and tethered by a thread so thin you only notice it when it catches the glow. The thread isn't a leash. It's a gentle boundary, keeping the lantern from drifting into a channel where it would interrupt flow. Atlantis is big on freedom with guardrails, which is honestly more emotionally mature than most of your week. The lantern begins to drift along the basin's slow circular current. Its petals pulse, and the water carries that glow outward in faint ripples of light. One by one, more lanterns touch the surface. The basin fills with floating orbs, each a small moving planet, each leaving a soft trail that fades behind it. The sea gardens answer, algae brightening slightly, kelp tips catching the glow and returning it like a quiet smile. You walk along the curve, following your lantern as it drifts. It passes beneath an arch of kelp trained into a graceful loop, and the kelp brightens for a moment, reflecting the lantern's pulse. Tiny ribbon creatures glide near the surface, weaving between orbs with an effortless delicacy. They brush past glass without disturbing it, like the whole ecosystem has mastered the art of not knocking over someone else's calm. You start to notice the festival's real craft. It is careful, not chaotic. A caretaker adjusts a tether by one finger's width so two lanterns don't drift too close. Another checks a feeder pocket at the garden edge, ensuring the algae keeps glowing through the night. Joy here is not assumed, it is maintained. Under it all, you feel the deeper resonance of orichalcum, steady and low, like a drum you don't hear so much as in habit. Occasionally the pulse deepens by a fraction, and the lantern's glow answers, tightening their rhythm for a moment, then relaxing again. Surface light and buried stability keep each other honest. You remember the market's clean exchanges and the tide scribe's ripples, and you realize Atlantis has been teaching you the same lesson in different languages. Calm is a system, not a personality trait. Which is irritatingly hopeful, because it suggests you could build it too. Your lantern completes a full circuit. As it passes you again, its glow seems slightly brighter, as if it has absorbed a bit of the city's pulse and is returning it to you. You brush the glass lightly, just enough to feel its smooth coolness, and your crystal bead warms once more, approving steady. Beyond the basin, the ring-canal continues onward, carrying lanterns into sea garden corridors where they'll drift for hours, threading light through kelp avenues like slow constellations. You follow along the edge of that flow, letting the moving orbs draw your attention into softer focus, until your thoughts begin to float the way the lanterns do, present, gentle, unhurried, and safely tethered to Atlantis. The lantern festival thins behind you as the ring-canal narrows and the glow cools again, as if the city is gently closing a door on celebration so you can hear something quieter underneath. The floating orbs continue their slow drift through kelp corridors, their pulses fading into the distance like lullabies you can still feel in your ribs even after the music ends. You follow a path that spirals inward along the inner ring, and the architecture grows more disciplined. The shell glass domes become fewer, replaced by curved walls of pale stone and crystal seams that run in clean arcs. The sea gardens remain, but they're trimmed tighter here, their glow steadier, their channels narrower. Everything looks maintained to a higher standard, not out of elitism, but out of necessity, like a hospital wing, except beautiful, because Atlantis refuses to be ugly even when it's serious. The air carries that faint metallic sweetness again. Orichalcum is closer. You feel it in the mild warmth rising through the stone, in the steadiness of the hum underfoot, in the way your crystal bead pulses more frequently now, as if it's sinking to a stronger signal. You hold the bead in your palm and notice its glow is no longer just warm. It has a thin golden thread running through it, like it's been tuned to match whatever lies ahead. You pass beneath a low arch etched with spiral grooves so fine they look like hairline scratches until you watch the light move across them. The grooves catch the canal's glow and bend it inward, guiding you through a corridor that curves downward. The walls tighten slightly, the ceiling lowers a fraction, and your body responds by slowing, the way you naturally slow when you enter a quiet room where someone might be sleeping. At the corridor's end, a threshold appears, a wide opening framed by crystal ribs and a thin seam of orichalcum embedded along the base. The orichalcum doesn't blaze. It glows like embers under ash, steady and patient. As you step across, you feel a change in pressure, not ocean pressure, but something like emotional pressure, a hush that wraps around your thoughts and makes them stop jangling. You enter a chamber that feels like the heart of the inner ring. The floor is crystal, thick and faintly warm, and beneath it you see a web of channels and nodes, crystal ribs, spiral grooves, and orichalcum points pulsing in slow sequence. The walls curve upward into a dome that doesn't reflect light harshly. It absorbs and softens, keeping the space calm. The air is cooler here, cleaner, almost sterile, but not in a clinical way, more like the air in a cave that has been untouched and therefore remains pure. At the chamber's center stands a structure that makes your breath catch, not with fear, but with reverence you didn't ask for. It's a vault, but not a vault like your world imagines. No thick door, no aggressive lock. Instead, a ring of crystal columns forms a circle around a central core. The columns are translucent, and inside each one faint lines of light drift upward in slow spirals. Between the columns, the space is open, but the air itself seems to resist crossing, as if the vault's boundary is made of tuned resonance rather than of metal and hinges. The core within the circle glows faintly gold. Orichalcum, concentrated. You feel its warmth reach you even from here, and the hum underfoot deepens, becoming more present in your bones. It's like standing near a massive sleeping animal, feeling its breath, knowing it could move if it wanted, and being grateful it chooses stillness. Around the perimeter of the chamber, caretakers move in silent routines. They carry crystal instruments and lantern spheres, adjusting small nodes embedded in the floor, checking shallow pools set into niches, observing light patterns along the columns. Their movements are slow, careful, not because they're afraid of the vault, but because they respect it the way you respect fire. You don't wave your hands around and hope for the best. One caretaker pauses near a shallow pool set into the floor, another tuned reservoir, but smaller, more precise. The pool holds a faint golden spiral that pulses in time with the vault core. The caretaker sets a lantern sphere beside it, and the sphere's inner petals brighten, then dim, then settle at a steady glow. You recognize the pattern from the tide scribes: tuning, alignment, stability. The caretaker turns slightly toward you, not with a dramatic gesture, not with a stern demand, but with that Atlantis way of guiding you through light and placement. They set a small object on a low crystal pedestal near you, a slender crystal rod, comb-like at one end, smooth at the other. It's not a weapon. It's a tool. Its surface catches the chamber's glow and throws it back in soft, wavering lines. Beside the tool, they place a lantern sphere, smaller than the festival orbs, dimmer, more focused. The sphere's glow is a calm amber, and the petals inside pulse slowly, like a metronome set to "Don't panic." A thin band of sea silk rests coiled beside it, shimmering faintly. You don't need words to understand what's happening. You are being asked to help. Not because the city is desperate, but because the city integrates people by giving them meaningful, manageable roles. Atlantis doesn't make you a spectator. It makes you part of the maintenance ritual. your task is simple. The tool's comb end fits into narrow grooves in the floor, grooves that run from the chamber perimeter toward the vault columns. These grooves carry light particles and micromotes, distributing calm resonance through crystal channels. Over time, fine silt and biofilm can gather even here, despite all the care. Your job is to sweep the grooves gently, not scraping, not forcing, just clearing the smallest obstructions so flow stays smooth. You kneel and place the comb end into the first groove. The crystal is cool under your fingers, and the groove hums faintly as if it's alive. You draw the comb along slowly, and a faint shimmer follows behind it, like a curtain being brushed smooth. The lantern sphere beside you brightens by a hair, then returns to baseline. Feedback. Confirmation. You are doing it right. You move to the next groove, then the next, working in a slow arc around the chamber. The act is meditative, small, repetitive, meaningful. The vault core's hum steadies in your ribs, and you feel yourself sinking to it, breathing in time with something ancient and carefully controlled. Halfway through your circuit, you notice something subtle. One of the crystal columns flickers, a tiny change in brightness, so brief you could blame your eyes. The lantern sphere beside you pulses slightly out of rhythm, then corrects itself. The pool's golden spiral tightens for a moment, then loosens again. It's not an alarm. It's not a crisis. It's a note, the kind of note the tide scribes would record and the engine house caretakers would adjust before anyone upstairs ever notices. But you feel it, because you're close enough now to sense the system's smallest tremors. You continue sweeping the grooves, careful and slow, letting the tool glide rather than press. The city's hush holds you, the vault's warmth steadies you, and the lantern sphere keeps pulsing, calm and patient, as if reminding you that even if something begins to flicker, the correct response in Atlantis is always the same. Notice, breathe, adjust gently, and keep the light flowing. The vault chamber remains hushed after that brief flicker, as if the city is trying to pretend nothing happened so you won't get dramatic. Atlantis has very little patience for drama. Still, your hands feel it before your eyes do. A faint change in vibration through the crystal grooves, a soft unevenness beneath the comb tool, like a pulse that briefly hesitates. You pause, not out of fear, but out of respect. The lantern sphere beside you responds with a tiny shift. Its inner petals tighten their rhythm, pulsing slightly faster for 3 beats, then easing back. The tune pool's golden spiral narrows, as if concentrating. The flicker returns, this time not as a single blink but as a slow dimming in one column's internal light threads. The change is subtle, but you've been trained by the city's quiet signals all night. You recognize it as a deviation from baseline, the kind that matters because it's small enough to correct gently, if you notice it soon enough. The caretakers around the chamber adjust without urgency. A hand rests near a floor node. A lantern sphere is moved 1 square on a faint grid etched into crystal. A sea silk band is lifted and checked for tension. Everything remains slow, deliberate, almost tender. There is no alarm because alarms are for places that wait too long to listen. You resume your sweeping, but your attention widens. You watch the columns as you move. You watch the pools spiral. You watch the lantern sphere's pulse. The vault core glows steady, still warm gold, still calm, but the system around it is beginning to show small ripples of strain, like a perfectly smooth surface developing faint tremors. As you complete your arc, A second column's light threads dim by a shade. Then a third. Not collapsing, not blacking out, just dimming, like someone lowering a lamp to save energy. The hum underfoot deepens a fraction, and you feel a mild pressure in your ears, like the city's resonance is tightening to compensate. Your crystal bead warms sharply, then cools again. It pulses twice. The message is clear in sensation: follow, observe, help. You rise and move toward the chamber's exit corridor, and the transition out of the vault hush feels like stepping from deep water into shallower, still calm, but with more texture. The air grows a touch warmer. The metallic sweetness fades slightly. You pass beneath the arch, and the orichalcum seam at the base of the wall pulses once, steady, like a heartbeat insisting it's still fine. Then you notice it outside the chamber. The corridor lighting is dimmer than before. The translucent wall panels still glow, but their tone is cooler and weaker. Behind the panels, the channels of water carry fewer motes of light. The micromotes drift more slowly, clustering in thicker groups, as if they're working harder. You step onto an inner ring terrace and look along the canal. The crystal rim still glows, but its pulse is less confident, tiny hesitations between beats. A crescent craft glides past, and you see a faint stutter in its drift, a momentary slowdown, then a correction. The canal current is wobbling. Across the terrace, sea gardens that were steady green now look slightly muted, their glow reduced, like embers covered by a thin layer of ash. The kelp tips still shimmer, but not as brightly. Coral fans hold their light, but the surrounding algae looks tired, its pulse less synchronized. Atlantis is not falling apart. It is simply showing signs of imbalance, an early warning, like your body's first hint of a headache before it becomes a full day ruined. Caretakers move through the terrace with the same calm they had in the vault chamber, but their routines have shifted. They check canal posts, touch crystal nodes, adjust lantern spheres on grid-marked pads. A few carry small trays of pearl seed and fine green powder, nutrients for the microlife that maintains clarity and glow. Others carry crystal comb tools like yours, heading towards seam access points. You follow their flow along the canal walkway. The city's ring geometry guides you toward a junction node where multiple channels meet. Here, the light code is usually crisp. Tonight, it wavers. Lantern spheres along the dock posts pulse out of sync for a moment. 2 beats fast, 1 beats slow, then settle into a steadier rhythm as a caretaker shifts a lantern's position by a single square. You reach the junction and feel the canal current change under your feet. The water is still smooth, but it has a faint tremor, like a breathing pattern that's slightly uneven. The crystal rim pulses, and between pulses you sense a tiny delay, a hesitation. The caretakers open a maintenance port, quietly, cleanly, revealing a narrow groove where light particles and micromotes travel. One caretaker draws a crystal comb through the groove with slow precision, clearing fine silt you can barely see. Another sprinkles a pinch of green powder into a feeder channel, and you watch the micromotes cluster, brighten, then disperse outward like a healing swarm. The junction's lantern spheres respond. Their pulses align more cleanly. The rim glow strengthens by a shade. The canal current steadies for a few seconds. Then the tremor returns. You feel it now as a pattern, not a random glitch, a gentle oscillation moving through the inner ring, like a resonance wave. The vault chamber flickers weren't isolated. They were the source, or at least close to it. Something near the orichalcum core is slightly out of tune, sending faint instability outward through the channels that distribute light and calm. The sea gardens respond too. When the canal current steadies, the algae brightens. When the tremor returns, the glow dims. The whole city is interconnected, and the problem is systemic, not local. You move with the caretakers toward a stretch of terrace where the sea garden glow is weakest. Here, kelp fronds sway more slowly, as if the water's energy is lower. Coral fans hold their shape, but their edges look less luminous. The air feels slightly cooler, and you notice your own breath getting a little shallower, your body reacting to environmental instability the way it always does, even when you tell yourself you're fine. You resist the instinct to speed up. Atlantis has been training you for this. You match the caretaker's pace, slow, deliberate. You kneel beside a feeder channel and use your comb tool to clear a groove. You sprinkle a tiny pinch of nutrient powder into the water, watching micromotes gather and brighten. You adjust a lantern sphere on a grid pad, aligning it with the canal rim's pulse. For a moment, the terrace glow strengthens. The kelp tips shimmer brighter. The coral edges catch the renewed light. The canal current smooths. It's a partial fix, a local stabilization. Useful, but not enough. The tremor continues to pass through the ring, gentle but persistent, like a low, steady cough. You stand and look inward, toward the direction of the vault chamber, feeling the orichalcum hum underfoot. The city's heartbeat remains calm, but you sense the deeper truth now. Atlantis can be repaired, but the tuning must happen at the source. The caretakers are stabilizing the outer symptoms so the city can keep breathing while you all prepare to listen more closely to the core. Your crystal bead pulses again, twice steady, and you know the next step will draw you back toward the vault, not in panic, but in quiet responsibility, to find the exact place where the resonance has slipped, and to guide it gently back into harmony. You move inward again along the ring, not rushing, not pretending the tremor isn't there either. Atlantis has a way of making urgency feel unnecessary without making the situation feel ignored. The canal beside you still glows, but the pulse carries faint irregularities. Tiny timing slips that your body now recognizes the way it recognizes a familiar song played slightly off-tempo. The caretakers travel in small clusters, spaced like the crafts in the canal, calm distance, clear lanes, no crowding. They carry instruments that look almost ceremonial, crystal rods, comb tools, lantern spheres with different inner petal tones, thin sea silk bands wound around wrists, and tools like soft restraints for moving light. Everything they hold is designed to touch the system lightly, to adjust rather than to force. You return to the corridor that leads toward the vault chamber, and the lighting here is dimmer than when you first entered. The translucent wall panels still glow, but their inner light threads drift more slowly, and you see micromotes clustering thicker at certain bends, as if the channels are experiencing subtle resistance. Not blockage exactly, more like friction, a loss of smooth flow. A caretaker pauses at a wall panel and rests a palm against a crystal node. The panel brightens briefly, and you see the channel behind it flare with light, then settle. The flare isn't a fix. It's a test. A way to check responsiveness, like tapping a spoon against a glass to hear if the tone is clean. You do the same, gently, with your comb tool resting in your hand. You place your fingertips against the seam in the wall, not pressing, just contacting, and you feel the vibration through your skin. It's low and steady, but there's a faint wobble layered on top, like a slow tremolo. The wobble comes and goes in cycles, moving through the corridor like a wave. You begin to suspect it's not random at all. It's resonance drift, a mismatch between the vault core's pulse and the distribution channel's tuned pathways. The corridor opens into a small diagnostic alcove you didn't notice earlier, or maybe it wasn't lit enough to invite you then. The floor holds a shallow pool, a tuned reservoir, but unlike the memory pools, this one is narrow and elongated, shaped like a thin oval. Its surface is dark and glossy. Above it hangs a vertical line of lantern spheres, similar to the engine house graph, but here the spheres are smaller, their glow more focused. Their brightness changes in minute increments, a slow dance of data. You stand at the edge and watch the pool's surface. A faint spiral of light forms, then loosens, then tightens again, as if breathing with difficulty. A caretaker places a lantern sphere beside the pool on a faint grid etched into the crystal floor. The pool responds immediately. The spiral tightens, then stabilizes for a few beats, then drifts out again. The lantern line above flickers slightly. One sphere dims by a hair, another brightens to compensate. You understand the method without needing explanation. They're probing. They're matching signals, observing responses, narrowing the location of drift. The sea silk bands come into play. A caretaker stretches one band across a small groove in the floor, one of the light distribution channels, tethering it lightly. The band shimmers, and its shimmer changes with vibration. When the groove's pulse is steady, the band's shimmer is smooth. When the wobble passes through, the shimmer breaks into tiny irregular ripples. You watch for the cycle. It returns every few seconds, slow, consistent, like a heartbeat with an extra hitch. The lantern spheres above the pool mirror it, dim, brighten, settle, dim, brighten, settle. The pool's spiral tightens in sync, then loosens. This is not a failing system. This is a system catching a misalignment early enough to correct with gentleness. You shift your attention outward, toward the vault chamber beyond the corridor bend. You feel the orichalcum hum underfoot deepen as you face that direction, like the city's heart is closer. The wobble and the vibration is strongest here in the diagnostic alcove, then slightly weaker as you step a few paces back. That gradient tells you something. The drift source is deeper inward, but the distribution channels here are amplifying it because they're tuned to carry resonance outward. When the source slips, the carriers wobble. You walk slowly along the corridor, letting your fingertips brush the wall seam every few steps, feeling the vibration change. Here, the wobble is mild. 2 steps forward, it strengthens. Another few steps, stronger still. You stop near a junction where several grooves meet, a place where light particles and micromotes split into different routes. The grooves are etched into crystal floor panels, each groove lined with faintly glowing spiral marks. At the junction, the wobble is most pronounced. The groove's glow hesitates between pulses. The micromotes cluster thicker, then surge forward in a small wave, then cluster again. It's as if the system is stuttering, trying to keep flow aligned with a source that's slightly out of tune. A caretaker kneels at the junction and places a lantern sphere on the grid beside one groove. Another sphere is placed beside a second groove. Their petal glows differ, one warmer, one cooler. The grooves respond differently too. The warmer sphere stabilizes one groove's pulse for a few beats, The cooler sphere stabilizes the other. But when both are present, the junction's overall wobble reduces, as if the combined signals help realign the split flows. You feel a small relief in your chest. This is progress. The system responds to tuning interventions. The drift is not catastrophic. It's fixable if you locate the precise point where the vault's resonance couples into these channels. You follow the caretakers deeper. The corridor narrows, then opens into an antechamber outside the vault chamber, still quiet, still clean, but now lit by a warmer gold tint. Orichalcum is closer still. The floor here is crystal over embedded nodes, and the nodes pulse in slow sequence, like a wave traveling outward from the vault. Tonight, the sequence isn't perfectly smooth. There's a tiny pause at one node, then the pulse continues. That pause sends the wobble down the line. You watch it travel like a slow ripple, and you understand. One node is slightly lagging, slightly resisting, creating a phase mismatch. You kneel and place your hand over the floor above the lagging node. The crystal is warm. The vibration is steady but with that hitch. You bring your comb tools smooth and close, not touching the crystal, and you feel the hum through the tool as if it's a stethoscope. The hitch is clearer now, an extra beat, an unevenness, a small but persistent flaw. The caretakers begin to prepare instruments, crystal rods to adjust note alignment, combs to clear grooves, lantern spheres to retune the pulse pattern, sea silk bands to measure shimmer smoothness. The diagnostic pool behind you continues to register wobble cycles, but here in the antechamber the pattern is sharper, more localized. You feel the city's calm insistence. The fix must happen here, at the coupling point between the vault's concentrated orichalcum core and the distribution network that feeds canals, sea gardens, and lantern systems. The caretakers have stabilized symptoms across the inner ring. Now you all focus on the source of drift. One lagging node, one misaligned groove, one subtle imbalance that could grow if left alone. Your crystal bead pulses once, slow and warm, like it's telling you the next step will be delicate. Not dangerous, but intimate. You're about to touch the city's nervous system more directly than before, and the only rule Atlantis seems to care about is the same one it's been teaching you all night: move slowly, listen deeply, and adjust with gentleness until the light flows smooth again. The antechamber holds you in a warm, gold-tinted hush, as if Atlantis is gathering its breath before allowing you closer to its heart. The lagging node beneath the crystal floor continues its tiny hesitation, pause, then pulse, like a heartbeat that catches on a thought. The caretakers don't react with fear. They react with preparation, tools placed in calm order, lantern spheres set on grid pads, sea silk bands stretched lightly across grooves to read shimmer. The whole scene feels like a surgical theater designed by someone who hates stress and loves moonlight. The orichalcum seam along the wall brightens slightly, and you feel the direction of invitation. The corridor ahead slopes down. Not steep, not dramatic, just enough to make your body register descent and respond by slowing further, the way you slow automatically when you approach deep water. You step forward with the caretakers, following the curve of pale stone walls that are laced with crystal ribs. The ribs glow softly, not illuminating like lamps but outlining the space like a gentle sketch. The air grows cooler and cleaner with each step, and the faint metallic sweetness becomes more pronounced, as if the corridor itself is exhaling warm gold. Along the walls, shallow niches hold small tuned pools, miniature versions of the tide scribe's reservoirs, each with a faint spiral of light. Tonight, the spirals are slightly irregular, tightening too much during the wobble cycle, then loosening again. They're diagnostic mirrors, reflecting the system's drift at different depths. The deeper you go, the sharper the irregularity appears, confirming what you already feel. The source is close. The corridor bends and passes beneath an arch where the crystal inlay is darker, smoky, almost like polished obsidian threaded with faint light. The arch has spiral grooves so fine they look like the grain of wood. As you pass under it, your crystal bead warms, and the orichalcum seam at the base of the wall pulses once, steady and deliberate, like a gate recognizing you. You enter a deeper chamber, smaller than the vault chamber above, but denser in presence. The floor is crystal, and beneath it the channel web is tighter, more intricate. Orichalcum nodes are closer together here, their glow warmer, their pulses more immediate in your bones. The hum underfoot deepens into something you feel in your teeth, not unpleasant, just intimate, like you're standing too close to a cello's body while it plays a long, low note. At the chamber's center, a circular opening reveals the final descent. It's not a shaft or a staircase in the usual sense. It's a spiral ramp that curves downward around a central column of shell glass. Inside that column, a core of orichalcum glows faintly gold, its light diffused through layers of crystal so it becomes soft and safe to look at. You begin the spiral, and the world tightens into rhythm, step, curve, glow, step, curve, glow. The walls are smooth stone with embedded crystal threads that drift upward like slow-moving constellations. The light is dim enough to keep your mind quiet, bright enough to keep you oriented. Atlantis knows exactly how much sensory input you can handle before your brain starts turning it into anxious stories. Halfway down, you notice the wobble cycle more clearly. The orichalcum glow in the central column remains steady, but the surrounding crystal threads hesitate in their drift. A node beneath the ramp pulses a fraction late. The delay is tiny, yet you can feel it as a slight pressure in your ears, a mild tightening in your chest, your body reading resonance like a language it didn't know it spoke. You reach the base of the spiral and step onto a circular platform that feels warmer than anything above. The crystal here holds a gentle heat, like sunlit stone at dusk. The air is still, clean, and softly metallic. Around the platform, a ring of narrow grooves runs along the floor, each groove etched with spiral marks and lined with faint light particles. These grooves are the coupling channels, the exact places where the vault's concentrated resonance is guided outward into the city's network. And here, at last, you see the vault core more directly. It's not a chest or a door. It's a suspended form within a crystal lattice, an orichalcum mass shaped like a smooth, elongated tear, hovering in the center of a ring of translucent supports. The supports are crystal ribs that curve inward and outward, forming a living cage that doesn't imprison the core so much as cradle it. The orichalcum glows from within, warm gold with hints of deeper copper, its light thick and soft, like honey held up to moonlight. The core hums, not as a sound, but as a presence that steadies your pulse. You feel, with strange tenderness, that this is power in its most responsible form, held, tuned, softened, distributed. Tonight the core remains calm, but the lattice around it tells the truth. One segment of crystal rib carries a slightly uneven drift of light threads. A narrow groove on the floor pulses out of sync by a hair. The wobble cycle is strongest here, like a ripple whose origin you're finally touching. The caretakers kneel around the platform's perimeter. Lantern spheres are placed on grid pads beside specific grooves. Sea silk bands are stretched lightly across the grooves to read shimmer. Crystal rods are positioned near small adjustment nodes. Tiny orichalcum points embedded in crystal that can be nudged, aligned, retuned. You kneel near the lagging groove. Your comb tool rests in your hand, and you bring its smooth end close to the groove without touching. The vibration you feel through the tool confirms it. This groove carries a phase mismatch. It pulses a fraction late, then tries to catch up, creating the systemic wobble that travels outward into canals and sea gardens. You begin with the gentlest intervention. The comb end slips into the groove, and you draw it along slowly, clearing fine silts and biofilm that could be adding friction. The light particles in the groove brighten behind the comb's path, flowing smoother for a few beats. The sea silk band stretched across the groove shimmers more evenly, but the hitch returns. So the next step is tuning, not cleaning. A caretaker places a lantern sphere beside the groove, its petals glowing a specific tone, warm amber with a thin golden thread. The groove responds by tightening its pulse, aligning closer to the core's rhythm for a moment. Another lantern is placed beside a neighboring groove, cooler in tone, stabilizing the split flow. Together, the lanterns reduce wobble amplitude. The sea silk shimmer smooths. You sense the lagging node beneath the platform. A small orichalcum point embedded in crystal needs a minute adjustment. Not a shove. A nudge. The crystal rod is placed against the node's casing, and you feel the vibration through the rod, like a tuning fork held against a warm bell. The rod's tip is aligned with a spiral mark etched into the crystal, Atlantis's way of providing alignment guides without words. You breathe slowly, matching the core's steady hum. You let the wobble cycle pass once more, listening for the exact moment the lag occurs. When it arrives, you apply the gentlest pressure, barely more than a touch, using the rod to rotate the node's alignment by a fraction, following the spiral guide. The effect is immediate but subtle. The groove's pulse hesitates less. The lantern sphere's petals settle into a steadier rhythm. The sea silk shimmer smooths further, like rippled water calming after a pebble is removed. You don't celebrate. Atlantis doesn't. You watch, you listen, you wait for the next wobble cycle. It comes weaker. The core remains steady. The lattice threads drift more smoothly. The platform warmth feels more even under your knees, as if the system is exhaling. You realize this work is intimate in a way you didn't expect. You're not repairing a machine. You're easing a living system back into harmony, like calming someone's breathing by placing your hand gently on their back and waiting until they match your pace. The orichalcum core hums steady beneath everything, and you kneel beside it, moving slowly, adjusting by fractions, letting the city teach you that even powerful things can be guided back to calm with patience and care. You stay kneeling at the coupling groove, not because you're stuck, but because you've learned the only way to verify calm is to keep listening after the first improvement. The wobble cycle returns like a shy habit, weaker than before, but still present, a faint hesitation that tries to reassert itself, as if the system is testing whether you meant it, whether the alignment will hold when the next wave passes through. The orichalcum core remains steady in its suspended lattice, glowing warm and patient, like a heart that refuses to panic. Its steadiness is almost annoying in the best way. It's giving you a baseline. This is what calm looks like when it's real, not when it's forced. The sea silk band stretched across the groove shimmers smoothly for several beats. Then, on the next cycle, you see a tiny disturbance, one quick irregular ripple across the band, like a wrinkle in fabric. The lantern sphere beside the groove responds with a slight tightening of its pedal pulse, then relaxes again. The hitch is now so small it feels almost petty. But Atlantis is built on the principle that petty problems become big ones only when you ignore them. You run the comb tool through the groove again, slower, more mindful. The comb catches nothing obvious. No clump, no grit, just the faintest drag, like biofilm that has begun to form at the microscopic level. You clear it gently and watch the light particles in the groove flow with less resistance, their movement smoother, their glow steadier. You shift your focus to the neighboring groove, the one stabilized by the cooler lantern sphere. In a system this interconnected, a single adjustment can create a new imbalance elsewhere, like tightening one string on an instrument and throwing another slightly out. You slide the comb into the neighboring groove and draw it along in a slow arc. The sea silk band on that groove shimmers evenly. No hitch. Good. The caretakers around the platform move in a quiet choreography. Someone adjusts a lantern's position by a single square on the grid pad, aligning its tone with the groove's pulse. Another checks a small tune pool in a niche beside the platform. Its spiral is already loosening into a more relaxed shape, a sign the resonance is smoothing. A third caretaker runs a crystal rod lightly along the base of a crystal rib in the lattice, not pressing, just sensing vibration. Their posture remains calm, but their attention is sharp, soft focus with precision, like a musician listening for a barely sour note. You wait for the wobble cycle again. It arrives faint. You feel it as a slight pressure in your ears. You see it as a tiny pause in the drift of light threads along one crystal rib. The sea silk shimmer wrinkles for a heartbeat, then smooths. That tells you the lagging node you adjusted is no longer the main culprit. It's better, but now the system reveals a secondary misalignment, one that only becomes visible when the larger drift is corrected. Atlantis is honest like that. When you fix the obvious problem, the subtle ones finally have the stage. You follow the vibration gradient along the floor grooves, moving your tool like a stethoscope, hovering the smooth end close to the crystal. The hum is strongest near the coupling ring, and you detect a slightly uneven resonance at a point where two grooves merge before splitting outward. A junction inside the coupling ring. The same kind of place you saw earlier in the corridor, where phase mismatch can amplify. A caretaker places a lantern sphere beside that junction, its petals glowing warm amber. The junction responds by brightening slightly, then pulsing more crisply. But on the next cycle, the pulse still hesitates by a hair. This time, the fix is not in the groove's cleanliness or in the node's rotation. It's in tension. The sea silk band tethering a microchannel nearby has been stretched slightly too tight, introduced during stabilization efforts above. It's barely visible, just a band shimmer that looks a bit strained, like a guitar string tuned too high. In a system where vibration is language, that tension matters. You loosen the band by the smallest amount, just enough to let it settle. The shimmer softens instantly, becoming more fluid. The groove's pulse responds on the next beat, aligning more closely with the core's hum. The hitch weakens again. It's almost absurd how small the cause was. And yet it makes perfect sense. Calm is made of small things kept in balance. You breathe with the core's steady hum, letting your exhale lengthen. The platform warmth feels more even under your knees. The air seems less tight. The metallic sweetness in your mouth becomes softer, less sharp, as if the system's resonance is no longer stressing itself. The wobble cycle returns once more, barely a whisper. The sea-soaked shimmer holds smooth. The lantern sphere's pedal pulses remain steady. The tuned pool spiral loosens into a slow, comfortable drift. The crystal ribs in the lattice carry their light threads upward without hesitation. A wave of relief moves through the space, not emotional in a human way, but systemic, like a pressure equalizing. You feel it travel into your chest, and your breath deepens without you deciding to do it. Atlantis exhales through you. Above, through the crystal floor and the channels, you sense the response spreading outward. It's not instantaneous, like flipping a switch. It's gradual, like warmth returning to fingers after cold. Light particles flow more smoothly down distribution grooves. Micromotes disperse more evenly, no longer clustering in stress piles. The canal pulse you felt stuttering earlier becomes smoother in your imagination, because you're feeling the source settle. You rise slowly from the platform, and as you stand, you look at the orichalcum core again. It remains suspended, glowing warm and patient, held by its crystal cradle. You realize the core never needed rescuing. It needed tuning at the interface, at the coupling channels that translate its steady hum into the city's distributed rhythm. The core is power. The channels are care. Without care, power wobbles. With care, power becomes gentle enough to be woven into gardens and lanterns. The caretakers begin to withdraw tools, not hurriedly, but with the quiet satisfaction of systems returning to baseline. Lantern spheres are lifted from grid pads. Sea silk bands are coiled neatly. Crystal rods are returned to niches. The platform remains warm, the grooves glow steady, the lattice threads drift in smooth spirals. As you ascend the spiral ramp back toward the antechamber, you feel the corridor vibrations smoother. The tuned pools and wall niches show spirals that are relaxed and symmetrical. The lantern line in the diagnostic alcove above, those little spheres hanging like a quiet graph, stabilizes, their brightness settling into calm equilibrium. When you step back onto the inner ring terrace, you see the change with your eyes at last. The sea gardens glow stronger, kelp tips shimmering with renewed life. Coral fans hold crisp edges of light. The canal pulses steady again, the rim crystals blinking in clean, confident sequences. A crescent craft glides past without stutter, its drift effortless, like a deep sigh made visible. Atlantis doesn't celebrate with fireworks. It celebrates by returning to steadiness. And as the city's light spreads outward in calm, you feel a matching steadiness settle into you, your own inner ring-canal smoothing, your own sea gardens relighting, your own pulse remembering how to be gentle. With the vault's resonance settled, the city feels lighter, not brighter in a flashy way, just more confident in its own glow. The inner ring hum beneath your feet smooths into a steady purr again, and you notice your body has started to treat that steadiness as permission. Your shoulders sit lower. Your breath drops deeper. Your thoughts stop rehearsing disaster scenarios like they're trying to win an award for. Most unhelpful imagination. The caretakers move back into their usual patterns, tools return to niches, lantern spheres hanging at their baseline pulse, channels flowing with clean intent. No one lingers in triumph. Atlantis doesn't clap for itself. It just keeps working quietly, which is honestly a healthier flex than most of what you've seen in the surface world. You feel the gentle pull outward, the city guiding you toward departure in the same way it guided you inward, with light and geometry rather than urgency. Your crystal bead remains warm in your palm, its thin golden thread steady now, no longer pulsing in anxious little signals. It feels less like a pass and more like a keepsake, a small piece of the system's calm you can carry with you. You return to the canal platform on the inner ring and step onto a crescent craft. The rim crystals blink in a clean, confident sequence, and the craft glides forward as if it's relieved you're not going to make it do overtime correcting stutters. The canal current holds you smoothly, and as you begin to spiral outward through junction nodes, you notice the light codes are crisp again. Lantern spheres on dock posts pulse in steady rhythms. The crystal rim brightens at precisely timed intervals. Even the micromotes drifting in feeder channels look more evenly distributed, no longer clustering like worried thoughts. At a junction basin, you pass beneath an arch where lantern festival orbs still drift in the distance, their glow softer now, like stars fading toward dawn. You remember how their pulses calmed your mind earlier, and you can't help appreciating the continuity. The same system that keeps canals clear and gardens glowing also creates beauty for the simple purpose of making people feel held. The craft carries you into the mid-ring, where the sea gardens return in fuller abundance. Kelp corridors arch overhead like living cathedrals. Coral terraces spread in layered fans that catch the canal glow and throw it back in quiet gradients. The water feels slightly warmer here, the air carrying that clean mineral sweetness again, like stone after rain. You lean into it and let it be enough. You catch small familiar details. A little basin beside a dome entrance where hands dip and leave tension behind. A wall of living shell mosaic filtering water with patient algae pockets. A crystal post whose glow is tuned to align with a particular star above. These are the city's tiny rituals, the ones that keep calm from being an accident. You feel an odd affection for them, the way you might feel affection for a well-worn mug that always fits your hands, or for a playlist that never betrays you with a sudden loud track. The craft glides past the market terraces, quieter now, but still alive with soft motion. You smell brine bread again, warm salt, faint sweetness, and you remember how your stomach relaxed when you ate it, as if the food had permission to be nourishing without being dramatic. You remember the jars of shimmering powders, the seawood resin that smelled like cedar taught to behave, and the bead currencies glowing in tones of trust. Atlantis made commerce feel like care, and you're still slightly offended that this is possible. As you continue outward, the architecture opens. The domes become more spaced, the terraces broader, the canal wider. The outer ring approaches, and with it the feeling of the ocean's vastness above. The glow in the crystal rims becomes more diffuse, less warm gold, more moonlit blue. The city shifts from intimate to expansive, like you've moved from a quiet room into a wide balcony. You pass a sea garden court where glow petals drift in shallow water over crystal, their light now steady and relaxed. The tuned spirals beneath the water are smooth, symmetrical. You recall the earlier dimming, the tiny wobble, and it feels distant already, like a nightmare you almost forgot. The city's stability has erased its own scare in the best way. by returning to normal before fear could get its claws in. A cluster of ribbon creatures glides near your craft, weaving between kelp tips that shimmer in renewed brightness. They move with that effortless delicacy again, and you remember seeing them ride the canal rim during your earlier travel. They are part of the system, part of the quiet maintenance, part of the city's gentle biology. You feel a small, unexpected gratitude for them too, because even the smallest living thing here seems aligned toward keeping the whole place steady. As you near the outer ring, the canal opens into a long stretch where the crystal floor is especially clear. You look down and see pale stones set beneath, smooth as if filed by centuries of care. Embedded within are faint spiral grooves, less intricate than the vault's coupling channels, but still precise, carrying light outward like soft veins. It's a reminder. The calm you felt in the vault isn't trapped down there. It's distributed all the way out here, into the city's edges, into the places where the ocean presses closest. The craft docks at a familiar platform, the one where you first arrived. Crystal posts line the rim, their points of light aligning with the stars above. The geometry looks the same, but you don't. You step off and feel the surface of the platform under your feet, cool and steady. The air tastes like salt and night. The ocean's pressure holds everything in place, including you. You walk along the outer ring terrace one last time, letting yourself collect small sensory souvenirs the way you might pocket shells at a beach. The scent of sea garden algae, clean and faintly sweet. The warmth of shell glass light against your palms. The low purr of orichalcum resonance under stone, now stable. The sight of lantern orbs drifting in the distance like slow constellations. The feel of crystal grooves under your fingertips, smooth from maintenance, never neglected. And you smile, tired and quiet, because you realize you'll remember this place not as a myth or a spectacle, but as a system of gentle choices. The ring-canals taught you to move without rushing. The sea gardens taught you that beauty can be functional and kind. The vault taught you that power can be held softly if you tune the channels with care. You close your fingers around the crystal bead one more time. It warms in your palm, steady and calm, like a tiny borrowed heartbeat. Then you turn toward the dark water beyond the outer ring, where your departure waits as patiently as your arrival did. Atlantis doesn't push you out. It simply opens the path and lets you leave when you're ready, which is the most respectful kind of farewell. You stand at the outer ring's edge where crystal meets open sea, and for a moment you just let yourself be still. The platform beneath you is cool and steady. The canal behind you pulses in clean, confident beats again, like a heart that has remembered its own rhythm. The sea gardens nearby glow softly, kelp tips shimmering as if they're waving without making it weird. The lantern orbs from the festival drift far off through garden corridors, tiny moving stars threading light through darkness at a pace that feels like mercy. You hold the crystal bead in your palm, and it doesn't pulse urgently anymore. It simply warms, steady and present, like a small, patient reassurance. You think of all the places it has led you, from the first starlit glide along crystal ring-canals, through the living sea garden walkways, past brine bread and pearlseed and resin-scented craft stalls, into the hush of memory pools, down into the engine house's hidden channels, and finally to the orichalcum heart where you learned what it means to fix something without violence. Atlantis has never once demanded awe from you. It has never once tried to impress you with noise. It just kept doing what it does, quietly distributing calm, maintaining clarity, tuning power into gentleness, until your nervous system stopped arguing and simply accepted. The water beyond the platform is dark, but not threatening. It's the kind of dark that feels like velvet, like a blanket pulled up to your chin. The ocean surface above is a faintly rippling mirror, and through it you can still see the moonlight scattered into trembling coins. You look back one last time at the rings, concentric arcs of crystal glow, terraces stepping inward, domes like shell bubbles holding steady light. The geometry is so precise it feels like a promise. If you keep returning to gentle rhythms, you can keep returning to yourself. You step toward the water, and the city responds the only way it knows how, through light. The canal rim brightens by a shade, then settles. A line of crystal posts along the platform edge pulses in a slow sequence, like a farewell that doesn't want to wake anyone. Even the sea gardens seem to soften their glow, as if dimming the room for you on purpose. You ease into the ocean and let it take your weight. The water is cool at first, then it becomes neutral, like it's adjusting to you. Your breath stays slow. Your body stays heavy in a good way, like gravity has decided to be kind. You swim outward, not fast, not trying to escape, just moving with the calm current that Atlantis has taught you to trust. As you drift away from the ring's light, you notice how far the city's influence reaches. The glow doesn't stop abruptly at the outer canal. It fades gradually, carried by micromotes and gentle currents, leaking softness into the surrounding sea like perfume that refuses to be rushed. Even the open water feels a little clearer, a little steadier, as if the city has been quietly cleaning and calming its own borders for centuries. You pass above a final arc of crystal embedded in the seabed, a boundary marker that feels less like a gate and more like a gentle hand on your back. Your crystal bead warms once, then cools slightly, as if acknowledging the transition. You don't feel cut off from Atlantis. You feel like you've been allowed to carry a thread of it with you. Above, the surface draws closer. The moon becomes less blurred, more defined. The stars sharpen. The ocean pressure eases by slow degrees, like a sigh unspooling. You can still feel the city's resonance faintly, a low purr in your bones, but it's no longer surrounding you. It's inside you, settled into your breath pattern, your pulse, the way your thoughts now move a fraction slower than they did when you arrived. You think of the small problem, the flicker, the dimming, the stutter in the canal flow, and you realize the real lesson wasn't about fixing Atlantis. Atlantis will keep being Atlantis. The lesson was about how you responded. You didn't panic. You didn't sprint. You didn't treat imbalance like a personal failure. You noticed, listened, and made small gentle adjustments until the system smoothed again. It's infuriating how transferable that is to your life. You imagine your own inner ring-canals, the ways you move through days, the currents you ride, the light you distribute. You imagine your own sea gardens, the habits that feed you, the quiet places that filter your mind. You imagine your own orichalcum, your energy, your power, your attention, and the channels that carry it outward. Maybe you don't need more power. Maybe you need better tuning. The surface welcomes you with a soft ripple. You break through into night air that feels cooler and lighter, and you float for a moment on your back, letting the ocean hold you the way Atlantis held you, steadily, without commentary. The city's rings are dimmer now beneath the water, but you can still see their faint geometry, like a secret drawn in light. You let your eyelids grow heavy. You let the bead rest against your chest, its warmth a small anchor. You send Atlantis a farewell without words, gratitude without performance. Then you turn your face toward the stars and allow yourself to drift, not away from the city, but onward with its calm stitched quietly into you. And now you don't have to do anything at all. You don't have to analyze the rings, or remember every glow, or solve another tiny wobble in the dark. You can simply let your mind loosen its grip, the way your fingers loosen when you finally set something down. Picture the crystal canals again, but softer now, as if seen through sleepy eyes. The light is there, but it's dimmed to a gentle hush. The sea gardens sway in slow, patient arcs, and every kelp tip that shimmered earlier now moves like a slow metronome, counting you down toward rest. Somewhere deep below, the orichalcum core keeps its steady hum, not demanding attention, only offering steadiness, like a quiet heartbeat you can borrow for the night. Let your breathing lengthen. Let each inhale feel cool and clean, like the water near the living shell walls. Let each exhale feel warm, like the terraced stones that held you without complaint. If thoughts drift in, little worries, little plans, imagine them as lantern orbs. They float gently past you, tethered and safe, never colliding, never dragging you under. You don't have to chase them. You don't have to fix them. You can let them drift along their slow current until they fade into the distance. Your shoulders soften. Your jaw unclenches. Your forehead smooths. Your whole body remembers that it's allowed to be heavy, allowed to be held. Atlantis is far beneath the surface now, but the calm you learn there is close, right here in the rhythm of your breath, right here in the quiet behind your eyes. Stay like this a little longer. Let the last glimmers of the ring-canals blur into velvet darkness. Let the ocean become a blanket. Let the stars become soft points of light that you don't need to name. And as sleep comes closer, imagine the city dimming the lanterns for you, one by one, until only one warm glow remains, steady, gentle, and safe. End of story. Sweet dreams.